Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Maybe both online and in the room, is there interest in trying to plan for some sort of event week? I guess an RGB event week with a focus on a phenomena. Virtual. Yeah, for training. Yeah. Yeah, and it could be within the next year. It doesn't have to be immediately. Or is this like, I know, Dan, did you actually? Okay. I know during the workshop yesterday, and we apologize to those online, although you heard a brief recap of it when Mark was going over the notes from yesterday's open sessions, that we're going to work towards creating a web page with highlighting, an introduction to RGBs, as well as content that we can share and translate, as well as trying to build a course. And so initially I was thinking, I didn't know how yesterday's sessions were going to go. So for this, I was thinking, we could do a little bit of brainstorming on the type of content. And I wonder if we should focus on that now, or if we should let it sit a little bit and stew. Okay, so we heard sometime early next year before it gets busy with conferences, and that may depend on which hemisphere we're in. Yeah. Okay, go ahead, Bodo. Or do we need to unmute you again? I don't know why, but occasionally.
No, it's fine.
Okay, you're fine.
I understand. Yeah, I've been able to control the button. Oh, look, I was just thinking, I think it's a great idea, and might be worth just maybe briefly going through that now, just for the benefit of the remote attendees who might not have been in on what happened yesterday. I'm just throwing it out there as my, how can I say, my 2 pennies worth.
Okay. In terms of, we didn't really discuss a lot of the topics because, let me see if I can pull this up here, or is it still displayed? I see, I shouldn't touch this one, right, Jose? I can. And let's see, I'm gonna probably have to find Dan's link.
While Bernie is doing that, I will say I just emailed a link for a survey for the workshop. It's like 6 questions. It'll take less than 5 minutes. So we'd ask if you have time to just fill that out. The goal here is so that we can improve things for next time. Now or later is fine on completing that. Thanks.
Are we able to get that link remotely too?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that, Bodo?
Are we able to get that link remotely as well? I'm just looking at my chat box and I'm not seeing anything.
So I sent it to everybody via email about 30 seconds ago. And so it made you look in your email inbox sometime in the next couple of minutes. Click on the link. If it doesn't work, let me know and I'll fix it.
Can you also put the link in the chat?
Oh, and yeah, I'll put the link in the chat too. Yep.
Because
I've got it in the email. Thank you.
Dan may not have everybody.
That's true.
Who's on the GoToWebinar right now. So here were some new ideas, and it's been echoed even today during the previous discussion, is starting with the basics of imagers and reflectance from atmospheric windows. So, basics, essentially. Give a more hands-on experience in a controlled environment and showing the individual components of the RGB. Colors can be subjective, so having a knowledge of the bands can be difficult to translate. So I guess these are some of the strengths and weaknesses type things. a centralized repository for utilizing the training materials. This could be hosted on regional training pages such as yours, Bodo, and then we link them back to something that might be in a Moodle course or is definitely linked into the WMO Global Campus Library. There's been some talk here about artificial intelligence and mixed learning, machine learning, mixed learning. I'm thinking mixed layer, machine learning to objectively identify features on a pixel level for the RGBs, presenting the RGB with the bands that make it up. There are lots of lists and guides for RGBs, but forecasters often approach them from the problem-based forecast. So can we better organize that either by a particular webinar or a focus for an event week or on a web page even? In the US, the US Weather Service radar applications course, can something like that be applied to satellite? And an add-on to that is the current course is including more satellite data. And then a consideration is we all know we have to train on many different aspects, not just satellites, so how we integrate this information with other ones. Using multi-tiered approaches. So working from simple to more complex applications and products. And that was it for this particular session. And then there was another one that was more specifically dealing with the web pages. And along the way, you might be seeing some things that we could throw in. One has to do with including color deficiencies. Some niche applications. That's warm rain and blowing snow, etc. Content, some of the content we could gather is existing quick guides, tools, publications, cases, modules come to mind, especially because I see Amy on board there. And I know Marcial already sent an email to WMO SSU to see if we can, what about hosting a web page? And some of what Dan sent out also reflects this question: who makes the decisions on what to include? So if you're willing to be a volunteer on some of this, please give your name.
This has been repeated a couple times, but on the topic of training, I have had a few specifically weather service people tell me, both at this meeting as well as others, that it might be a good time for sort of I'm just making up a name, but like Satellite 101, basics of satellite imagery interpretation with a focus on weather service. We did that, but prior to the GOES-R launch, but GOES-R launched in 2016. And so not only as a refresher, but also new employees, as well as some folks who have been around a long time, but still could probably use a refresh. Like at the time, we weren't talking about things like the day cloud phase RGB, and now it's become widely adopted. So that's one thing we could highlight in that training. So just tossing that out there for the training teams to think about.
Yeah, and that gets back to one of the things on the list in terms of targeting different audiences. And I'm glad you mentioned that because I have been thinking about that. That's one of the requests that we hear internationally as well. People are retiring and new people are coming on. And that's also why some of our partners at universities, are important because they're training some of the forecasters that are coming up now.
So Bodo, apologies, we're still doing a poor job at monitoring the chat, but about 10 minutes ago, you commented about something being for the benefit of remote attendees. It might be worth discussing it a little now. Can you, unless we've already covered this, can you elaborate on what you meant?
No, I think Bernie has already given me a pretty good idea, me as one of the remote attendees, just going through the topics that Bernie has just talked about there regarding an event week. So that part, there's just two things that have come to mind here. First of all, and I think Bernie touched upon this, there are already a lot of resources on the VLab regarding the application of RGB, various RGB composite 2 case studies, and Rion's showed an example of that 2 days ago over Indonesia. And these resources, they're already there. They can already be potentially marshaled into such an event week. And of course, the Caribbean Americas have 18 years of experience. Some of the more recent case studies there could also feed into the event week. So less preparation for people. But the other part that I thought that I always like to think about in terms of event weeks or conferences, I dislike the idea that the end of a conference or the end of an event week, that's it. We all go back to our own countries and it's all over Red Rover. So for me, I like the idea of then that it leads to something, that the end of that event week, we've actually got resources that can then continue, we can continue as a collaborative exercise to develop, but also as a result of that event week, we have something that we can showcase. They're my thoughts.
Thanks, Bodo.
So do we think it would be good to start tossing out a month for a potential event week? So Jose votes between February and April, and so does Ivan, and so does Connor, and so does Javier. I was thinking Jorge at first, but I know it begins with the J. But and Bodo, how is February through April for you? Because that would be
next year. I do have quite a lot of additional students coming through, but look, at this point, at the risk of risking, include me in this. I'll go with what everybody else is doing and do my damnness to be able to turn up and to contribute.
Okay, and it's something that we can also work with you and see if there's something that can't help you out as well.
And that's great. Certainly a lot of VLab resources here regarding to RGBs that I just love to mobilize.
I was thinking too, maybe it would be great if, I know there's a bunch of resources already out there and, us doing this, but like, what if we take, some training and maybe make it site specific or, certain regions, taking maybe some events or weather events that occur at these areas most often, at the Aviation Weather Center, some satellite or RGB products we look at differently than maybe SBC does. Some things that SBC uses we might not use, stuff like that. So I'm thinking maybe if there could be one destined person to, like me, for instance, take something from an event week and apply it to some type of training course for aviation forecasters to use it and apply it for aviation specific instances.
Sounds good. Sounds great.
Just walk over here, I'll chase the microphone. So I was kind of thinking about if we do an event week, what's it for? Because we all have regional training or national training in place, which could be strengthened, that's a given. So why do an event week? What can we get out of it, specifically an event week? And the thoughts that occur to me are a little bit, actually, it helps us gather resources, because the chances are if we do an event week in February, we're recycling a lot of stuff we've already got. That's good. The chances are if we're doing an event week that's kind of global, we've got to kind of bring all those resources together, which in itself is a tremendously valuable thing. We probably can't do a 101 or energize an entire community from zero to these steps. It's not going to get that done in a week, but it might provide some enthusiasm or energy to do that next step. So to sharing case studies from different, so for us in Europe, hearing US aviation case studies using the new RGBs is really interesting. And you're talking to your audience saying, hey, we've got this great stuff, everyone, re-energize your audience, but we get to hear it too, is fantastic. And we've got a little bit of insight into what you're doing. So it's a sort of a bit of a springboard into other things. So, yeah, so I can see it being really quite a beneficial thing, lots of recycling.
Yeah, and one of the things when it's global, because this came up at our VLab meeting a few weeks ago, is just sharing how we do things, how we do our approaches to them.
Yeah, so shooting from the hip a little bit here, we think about how different agencies in the US communicate with each other. We all look at the same satellite used for different purposes. So in that sense, we almost need, some type of an event week where we look at some case studies. We have some subject matter experts come in. We can then work on creating a 101 course. So kind of building off of what Dan was saying, and we can make it targeted to each of our primary agencies, whether that's WFO or a national center.
Okay, Bodo.
Yeah, just we were talking earlier about all the confusion of the various RGB composites and trying to group them into air mass or so forth. This could also be a really good opportunity to maybe make a start on that, or even develop a little bit, because in the course of doing these case studies from examples from all around the various regions, that will be feeding into potentially that audit document. I don't know if that's the right term.
The one that Maria put together that was shown earlier today?
It could be. I mean, yeah, I think so. I think that, yeah, that's right. And we're talking about, air mass, RGB, tropical air mass. Should it be tropical? Should it have another name? And we think one of the, and also potentially a couple of examples of RGBs for people who are vision impaired, putting that into categorizing that maybe as well could be one of the things that could flow out of an event week as well. Since we're covering the RGBs anyway, and getting familiar with those.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. Another thought, sometimes that we've done in the past is we have, say, an event week, but it might be spread over 2 weeks, and time frames. Is that something we should, huh? Yeah.
1 week, 2 weeks.
Yeah. Well, I mean, in a few hours, and maybe figure out how we can capture all 3 major regions, essentially. Whether it be mornings, probably mornings or afternoons, in wherever they are, and have at least you're trying to coordinate it. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So what would tend to work? A few hours at a time on a day? Is that how? Yeah. It's been a while since we've done a global event week. And I know that when we do our virtual online courses, like 6 or 7 hours is max. Yeah.
So for an event week where we're expecting full participation, we'd normally plan 6 to 9 months ahead for the notification shift work. So we've run a lot of what we call short courses recently that are between 1 and 2 hours. So basically you take one focused topic and run that for the 1 to 2 hours. My suggestion would be to populate an agenda with 1 to 2 hour slots. If we're targeting the beginning of next year, sort of February through April, that's just going to be more practical. And then we're basically providing a huge, great menu for people to choose from. I'm assuming we go for a principle of openness, so anyone can go to everything. Anyone who goes to everything gets a badge, because they won't have slept for the week and a half or whatever it is. It's probably helpful to have one coordinating website where the agenda is. Ideally in some form of, I guess, some form of calendar that people can then take into their own time zone. Yeah, that would be my suggestion, because then, I mean, so for example, on our side, Ivan might do the presentation he gave here as one offer to the event week. I guess if we had themes, that would fit in the theme of introducing RGBs. Yeah, hypothetically. And you might want to do a whole bunch of other things as well. Yeah, he's got more than one idea. And somebody from Poland might do something. And yeah, we could get somebody from Finland to do high latitudes. We get somebody from Finland to do an aviation one. I'm thinking, yeah, we do an aviation thing. High latitudes is probably interesting to these guys too. And you could have quite, I mean, I'm just thinking you could have like a bit of a winter thing going on, an aviation thing, a convection thing, sort of more introductory thing. The sort of categories that people could then tap into.
Yeah, we could do fire, dust, aviation, convection. We can also do a short session on color blindness, because I think that's a real interesting topic. Yeah, and that might be a good approach, taking a lot of what we reviewed here and presenting it to a wider audience. Add some geekiness. Okay. Okay, everybody take a deep breath. Okay.